He conquered the known world by age 30, never lost a battle, defeated armies 5 times larger than his own, built an empire stretching from Greece to India 2 million square miles in just 13 years. He personally led cavalry charges into enemy lines. He named 70 cities after himself. His enemies called him a god. His men followed him to the ends of the earth. Then he died at 32, and his empire shattered. Was Alexander the Great the greatest military commander who ever lived? Or a lucky, reckless conqueror who destroyed more than he built? This is the story of Alexander the King, the warrior, the legend, the question mark. The man who changed the world and never lived to see what he'd created. June 11th, 323 BCE, Babylon, the greatest palace in the ancient world. Alexander the Great, king of Macedon, pharaoh of Egypt, king of Persia, lord of Asia, conqueror of the known world, lies dying. He's only 32 years old. His generals and companions crowd around, desperate. To whom do you leave your kingdom? They ask. According to legend, Alexander whispers, to the strongest. 10 days later, he's dead. The cause is debated: malaria, typhoid, poisoning, liver failure from years of heavy drinking. We'll never know for certain. But this much is certain: Alexander has conquered an empire larger than any in history. From Greece to Egypt, from Turkey to Afghanistan, from Persia to the borders of India, over 2 million square miles, encompassing perhaps 50 million people. He's done it in just 13 years. He's never lost a battle. He's defeated the mighty Persian Empire, the largest empire the world has known. He's crossed deserts, mountains, and rivers that no Western army has crossed before. He's fought in over 100 battles and sieges. But was he the greatest general in history? That question has fascinated people for over 2,300 years. Military commanders from Julius Caesar to Napoleon to George Patton studied his campaigns. Historians debate his tactics. Strategists analyze his battles. Was he a tactical genius, or just incredibly bold? A visionary, or a destroyer? A unifier of civilizations, or a conqueror who built nothing lasting? Did he succeed through brilliance, or because he inherited a magnificent army from his father? This is the story of Alexander the Great, from prince to world conqueror, from student of Aristotle to legendary warrior king. It's a story of ambition, courage, tactical brilliance, and ultimately, hubris. Let's start at the beginning. July 356 BCE, Pella, capital of Macedon. A son is born to King Philip II and Queen Olympias. They named him Alexander. According to legend, the night he's born, the temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders, burns down. Seers predict this means the boy will one day destroy Asia. Another legend claims he's descended from Achilles on his mother's side and Heracles, Hercules, on his father's side. Whether these legends are true or created later doesn't matter. Alexander believes them. From childhood, he's convinced he's destined for greatness, descended from gods and heroes. His father, Philip II, is already making Macedon into a major power. When Philip becomes king in 359 BCE, Macedon is a weak, divided kingdom constantly threatened by neighbors. Within 20 years, Philip transforms it into the dominant power in Greece. Philip's innovations are military. He creates the Macedonian phalanx infantry armed with Ceresis 18-foot-long pikes. This phalanx is nearly unstoppable. He develops the companion cavalry, elite heavy cavalry, who will become Alexander's most feared weapon. He reorganizes the army's logistics, allowing faster campaigns. He conquers neighboring territories, expanding Macedon's power and wealth. By the time Alexander is a teenager, Macedon is the most powerful state in Greece, though the proud Greek city-states still consider Macedonians semi-barbarians, Alexanders. education is exceptional. From age 13 to 16, his tutor is Aristotle, history's most famous philosopher. Aristotle teaches him philosophy, poetry, medicine, science, and politics. Alexander develops a lifelong love of Homer's Iliad. He keeps a copy under his pillow alongside a dagger. His hero is Achilles, the greatest warrior, who chose a short, glorious life over a long, obscure one. This choice will define Alexander's life, but Alexander also learns practical skills. He's trained in warfare from childhood. He learns to ride, fight with sword and spear, lead men. By age 16, when Philip goes on campaign, he leaves Alexander as regent. While ruling Macedon, Alexander suppresses a rebellion, demonstrating military competence. At 18, at the Battle of Chaeronea in 338 BCE, Alexander commands the left wing of Philip's army against a coalition of Greek city-states, including Athens and Thebes. He leads the companion cavalry in a decisive charge that breaks the enemy line and wins the battle. Philip controls Greece. But father and son have a complicated relationship. Both are ambitious, bold, quick-tempered. Olympias, Alexander's mother, is intensely ambitious for her son and hostile to Philip's other wives. Philip practices polygamy, taking multiple wives for political alliances. At Philip's wedding to a new wife, Cleopatra, a Macedonian noble, toasts that Philip might finally have a legitimate heir, implying Alexander, whose mother is from Epirus, modern Albania, is somehow illegitimate. Alexander throws his cup at the man. Philip draws his sword and charges at Alexander, but trips and falls. Alexander mocks him. Here is the man who would cross from Europe to Asia, and he can't even cross from one couch to another. Alexander and Olympias flee to Epirus. Eventually, they're reconciled, but the rift shows the tensions. Philip is planning to invade Persia, the next step in his ambitions. But will Alexander have a role? October 336 BCE, during a celebration. At Aegia, Philip's bodyguard, Pausanias, assassinates him. The motives are murky personal grievance, court intrigue, perhaps conspiracy. Some ancient sources hint Olympias or even Alexander might be involved, though evidence is thin. What matters is, Philip is dead, and Alexander, at age 20, becomes king. It's a dangerous moment. Multiple rivals claim the throne. Neighboring tribes sense opportunity. Greek city-states, resentful of Macedonian dominance, consider rebellion. Alexander moves decisively. He executes potential rivals and consolidates power. When Thebes rebels, he marches south and utterly destroys the city. 6,000 Thebans killed, 30,000 enslaved. The message is clear. Rebellion will be crushed without mercy. Within 2 years, Alexander has secured his throne and Greece. Now he turns to his father's dream, the conquest of Persia. Spring 334 BC, Alexander crosses the Hellespont, the narrow strait separating Europe and Asia, with about 40,000 infantry and 5,000 cavalry. It's a calculated risk. He's leaving Europe, barely secured, taking most of his army to Asia, attacking the largest empire in the world. The Persian Empire stretches from Turkey to India, from Egypt to Central Asia. It has hundreds of thousands of soldiers, vast wealth, centuries of military tradition. Alexander has 45,000 men and enormous debts. His treasury can only pay his army for about a month. He must win quickly, capture Persian wealth, and keep winning. His first move is symbolic. He sails to Troy, site of the Trojan War from Homer's Iliad. He runs naked around Achilles' tomb and places a wreath on it, claiming he'll surpass his hero. His companion Hephaestion does the same at Patroclus' tomb, Achilles' closest companion in the Iliad, just as Hephaestion is Alexander's. Ancient warfare meets modern ambition. May 334 BCE, The Battle of Granicus River. Persian satraps, provincial. Governors assemble an army to stop Alexander, about 20,000. Cavalry and 20,000 Greek mercenary infantry. They position themselves behind a river with steep banks, believing Alexander won't dare attack across water against prepared defenders. They're wrong. Alexander personally leads the companion cavalry in a charge across the river and up the bank, one of the most audacious cavalry charges in military history. Persian cavalry counterattack. The fighting is brutal, hand to hand. Alexander is nearly killed. A Persian noble strikes him, cracking his helmet. Cletus the Black, one of Alexander's officers, saves his life by killing the Persian Dot. The Macedonian phalanx crosses and engages the Greek mercenaries. The battle becomes a slaughter. Persian cavalry flees. The Greek mercenaries, surrounded, ask for terms. Alexander refuses. They're Greeks fighting against Greeks, which he considers treason. Nearly all 20,000 are killed or enslaved. Alexander's first battle against Persia, and a complete victory. Alexander then conquers the coastal cities of Asia Minor, modern Turkey. His strategy is brilliant. Control the coast, deny the Persian navy ports, neutralize Persian naval superiority without fighting at sea. Most cities surrender. Those that resist are besieged. At Miletus, Alexander's siege engines break the walls. At Halicarnassus, a tough siege ends with the city burned. But always, Alexander is personally in the thick of fighting leading assaults, exposed to danger. His courage inspires his men, but it's also reckless. A king who dies in battle leaves chaos. By late 334 BCE, Alexander controls Asia Minor's coast. The Persian navy, with nowhere to resupply, becomes irrelevant. It's a strategic masterstroke, neutralizing your enemy's advantage without direct confrontation. November 333 BCE, the Battle of Issus. King Darius III of Persia finally responds personally. He assembles a huge army. Estimates range from 100,000 to 600,000, though realistic figures are probably around 100,000. Alexander has perhaps 40,000. The armies meet near Issus, in a narrow coastal plain between mountains and sea. The narrow terrain negates Persian numerical superiority. They can't bring their full force to bear. Alexander uses his favorite tactic: hold with the phalanx, strike with the cavalry. He personally leads the companion cavalry in a wedge formation. Famous Macedonian cavalry wedge aimed directly at Darius. The charge is devastating. The companions smash through Persian lines, driving straight toward the Persian king. Darius, seeing enemy cavalry bearing down on him, loses his nerve and flees. Once the king runs, his army collapses. It's a complete victory. Persian casualties are massive. Alexander captures Darius' camp, including his mother, wife, and children. According to sources, Alexander treats them with respect, calling Darius Mother, himself a propaganda coup, showing he's not a barbarian destroyer, but a civilized ruler. After Issus, Darius offers peace. He'll give Alexander all territory west of the Euphrates River, a massive ransom for his family, and his daughter in marriage. It's a generous offer. Alexander would control half the Persian Empire without more. Fighting. Parmenion, Alexander's senior general, says, "If I were Alexander, I would accept." Alexander replies, "If I were Parmenion, so would I." He refuses. He wants everything, the entire Persian Empire, nothing less. Some call this ambition. Others call it megalomania. Either way, the war continues. Instead of pursuing Darius immediately, Alexander turns south, securing the coast. Syria surrenders. Tyre, a wealthy island city, refuses. The Siege of Tyre, January to August 332 BCE, becomes legendary. Tyre is on an island half a mile offshore, supposedly impregnable. Alexander builds a causeway, a land bridge, from the mainland to the island. The Tyrians attack his workers, burn his siege engines, fight ferociously. Alexander persists. He assembles a fleet, blockades the island, and finally assaults the walls from land and sea simultaneously. When the walls breach, Macedonians pour in. The battle is savage. 8,000 Tyrians die. 2,000 are crucified. 30,000 are enslaved. It's a brutal warning. Resistance is futile. Most subsequent cities surrender. Alexander, then, conquers Egypt easily, because Egyptians hate Persian rule. He's welcomed as a liberator and crowned pharaoh. In Egypt, Alexander does something extraordinary. He travels to the oracle of Amun at Siwa Oasis, deep in the Libyan desert. What happens there is mystery. Only Alexander enters the inner sanctuary. When he emerges, he claims the oracle confirmed he's the son of Zeus, whom Greeks identified with the Egyptian god Amun. Whether he believes this literally or uses it politically, it works. Egyptians accept divine kingship. Pharaohs are gods. Greeks can rationalize it. Perhaps Zeus fathered him in some metaphorical sense. But some Macedonians are troubled. They serve a king, not a god. This tension will grow. Alexander also founds Alexandria on Egypt's Mediterranean coast. It will become one of history's greatest city center of Hellenistic learning, home to the famous Library of Alexandria. Alexander will found dozens of cities during his campaigns, spreading Greek culture and consolidating his conquests. But Alexandria is the greatest, the one that truly lasts. With Egypt secured, Alexander's strategic position is strong. He controls the entire eastern Mediterranean coast. Persian naval power is finished. His supply lines are secure. His treasury, filled with Egyptian wealth, can support his army. Now he's ready for the final confrontation with Darius. October 1st, 331 BCE, near Gaugamela. In modern northern Iraq, Alexander faces Darius for the final time. Darius has prepared carefully. He's assembled an enormous army. Ancient sources claim 1 million men. Modern estimates suggest 100,000 to 250,000. He's chosen flat, open terrain perfect for his cavalry and chariots. He's even leveled and smoothed the battlefield, so his scythe chariots with blades on their wheels, designed to slice through infantry, can charge effectively. Alexander has perhaps 47,000 men, outnumbered at least 2 to 1, possibly 5-1. The night before battle, Parmenion suggests a night attack, when darkness might negate Persian numbers. Alexander refuses. I will not steal victory. This might be arrogance or confidence, or propaganda painting himself as so superior he doesn't need tricks. The battle begins with Darius launching his scythed chariots. They're supposed to terrify and disorganize Alexander's infantry. Instead, the phalanx simply opens gaps, letting chariots pass through harmlessly, and closes ranks again. Support troops pick off the chariot crews. The chariots accomplish nothing. Darius then sends cavalry to outflank Alexander's right wing. Alexander counters by extending his line, refusing to be surrounded. This creates gaps in both armies. Then Alexander sees his opportunity. A gap opens in the Persian line near Darius' position. Alexander personally leads the companion cavalry, about 5,000 horsemen, in a devastating charge directly at that gap. It's the same tactic as Issus, but on a larger scale. The companions smash through Persian lines in a wedge formation, driving toward Darius. Behind them, the phalanx advances, rolling up the Persian line. Meanwhile, on Alexander's left wing, Parmenion is hard-pressed. Persian cavalry and Indian allies are pushing him back, even threatening Alexander's camp. Parmenion sends urgent messages. He needs help, but Alexander doesn't divert. He keeps pressing forward, betting everything on breaking the Persian center and reaching Darius. It's an incredible gamble. If Parmenion breaks, Alexander's army could be surrounded and destroyed. But Alexander understands psychology. If Darius flees, the battle is won regardless of what happens elsewhere. And Darius flees. Again, seeing Macedonian cavalry bearing down, fearing capture or death, the Persian king turns and runs. His flight is probably prudent, better to preserve the king and fight another day than be captured. But psychologically, it's disastrous. Word spreads that the king has fled. The Persian army dissolves into retreat. Alexander pursues, but Darius escapes. However, the victory is absolute. Persian casualties are enormous, perhaps 50,000 killed. Macedonian casualties are relatively light, several thousand. With Gaugamela, the Persian Empire effectively ends. Darius is still alive, but he's lost his army, his credibility, his capital. Alexander marches on Babylon, which surrenders without resistance. He enters in triumph, accepts the submission of its governor, and is acclaimed as king of Persia. Then he takes Susa, another Persian capital, capturing vast treasures. Then Persepolis, the ceremonial capital, where he finds the greatest wealth, yet 180,000 talents of gold and silver, equivalent to perhaps $10 to 20 billion today. At Persepolis, Alexander does something controversial. He burns the palace of Xerxes, Persian king who invaded Greece and burned Athens 150 years earlier. Ancient sources disagree whether it's deliberate revenge, drunken accident, or political calculation. Regardless, it symbolizes Persian power's end. What made Alexander's victory at Gaugamela so remarkable? Tactical brilliance. He identified his enemy's strength numbers and cavalry and negated them through terrain choice and tactics. He created and exploited an opening. He coordinated infantry and cavalry perfectly. Personal leadership. He led from the front, sharing dangers, inspiring men. His courage was magnetic, psychological warfare. He understood that breaking the enemy's will specifically, making Darius flee, was more important than killing every soldier. Strategic vision. He saw that controlling Persia's capitals and wealth mattered more than chasing a fleeing king through. The wilderness. Training and discipline. His army executed complex maneuvers under fire. The phalanx opened and closed ranks to let chariots through. The cavalry charged in formation. This requires incredible training. Gaugamela is considered one of history's decisive battles, one that changed the course of history. It ended the Persian Empire, spread Greek culture to Asia, and established Alexander as potentially the greatest tactical commander who ever lived. But the conquest isn't over. It's just beginning. With Persia conquered, most generals would stop, consolidate, and rule their empire. Alexander pushes forward. He pursues Darius into Central Asia. In July 330 BCE, Darius is murdered by his own governors, who hope Alexander will spare them if they deliver their king dead. Alexander is furious. Darius was his enemy, but he was also a king, and one king should respect another. Alexander gives Darius a royal burial and executes his murderers. He now claims not to be a conqueror, but Darius' legitimate successor, ruling Persia by right. This is a turning point. Alexander is no longer simply conquering Persia. He's becoming Persian. He adopts Persian dress, Persian court ceremonies, Persian administrative systems. He marries Roxana, a Bactrian princess. He encouraged Macedonians and Persians to intermarry, trying to blend cultures. Many Macedonians hate this. They didn't conquer Persia to become Persian. They view Persian customs as effeminate, servile, Macedonian. Tensions explode over proskinesis, a Persian custom of prostrating before the king. To Persians, it's standard court etiquette. To Greeks and Macedonians, you only prostrate before gods. When Alexander suggests Macedonians should prostrate, Many refuse. Callisthenes, a historian traveling with the army and Aristotle's nephew, openly opposes it, saying, "Alexander is a man, not a god." This resistance infuriates Alexander. He abandons the formal attempt to impose proskynesis on Macedonians, but tensions remain. Later, Callisthenes is implicated in a conspiracy, possibly false charges, and executed. The relationship between Alexander and his Macedonians is fracturing. The worst incident comes in 328 BCE at Maracanda, Samarkand. During a drunken feast, Alexander and Cletus the Black, the man who saved his life, at Granicus argue. Cletus criticizes Alexander's adoption of Persian customs and his claim to divinity. He says Alexander's victories are due to Philip's army, not Alexander's genius. Alexander, drunk and enraged, grabs a spear and kills Cletus. When he sobers and realizes what he's done killed a loyal companion and savior, Alexander is devastated. He locks himself away for days, overcome with grief and guilt. His companions eventually coax him out, but the incident shows how power, stress, and alcohol are corrupting him. Meanwhile, the military campaigns continue. Central Asia, modern Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, proves difficult to conquer. It's mountainous, poor, and inhabited by fierce nomadic tribes. There are no set-piece battles where Alexander's tactical genius can shine. Instead, it's guerrilla warfare, ambushes, raids, resistance that melts away, then reappears. It takes 4 brutal years to subdue Central Asia. Alexander found cities. Alexandria Eshet, Alexandria the furthest. For example, to control key points. He marries Roxana partly to cement alliances with local rulers. He fights, negotiates, and occasionally massacres Resi Sters by 326 BC. Central Asia is nominally pacified. But Alexander isn't satisfied. Beyond the mountains lies India, which to Greeks means the edge of the world. Alexander wants to reach it. Spring 326 BCE, Alexander crosses the Hindu Kush Mountains and invades India, specifically the Punjab region. He allies with some local rulers and fights others. King Porus of the Parava kingdom refuses submission. At the Hydaspes River, modern Jhelum River, Alexander faces his last major battle. The Battle of Hydaspes is remarkable because Porus uses war elephants, dozens of them. Alexander's horses have never faced elephants and are terrified. The battle is hard fought. Alexander wins through superior tactics, using light infantry to harass elephants, causing them to rampage through their own lines, but the victory is costly. Alexander is so impressed by Porus' courage, the Indian king fought even after being wounded, that he not only spares him, but restores his kingdom and makes him an ally. Alexander wants to continue east, toward the Ganges, toward the infinite riches he's heard India contains. But his army has had enough. They've been campaigning for 8 years. They've marched thousands of miles, fought dozens of battles, endured deserts and mountains and monsoons. They're exhausted. They want to go home. At the Hyphasis River, modern Bees River, the army mutinies, not violently, but firmly. They simply refuse to continue. Even Alexander's inspirational speeches can't move them. For 3 days, Alexander sulks in his tent like Achilles at Troy, hoping the men will change their minds. They don't. Finally, he accepts reality. The conquest ends here. It's the only battle. Alexander loses against his own men's exhaustion. The return is catastrophic. Rather than return the way he came, Alexander decides to explore new routes. He splits the army. One part, led by General Craterus, takes a northern route. Another part, led by Nearchus, explores the coast by sea. Alexander leads the main force through the Gedrosian Desert, modern southern Iran and Pakistan, one of the most inhospitable places on earth. It's a disaster. The desert is waterless. Scorching, barren. Supplies run out. Men die of thirst, heat, and starvation by the thousands. When they finally reach water, some drink so much they die. Ancient sources claim Alexander loses more men in this desert march than in all his battles combined. Possibly 20,000 to 25,000 soldiers and camp followers died. Why does Alexander take this route? Ancient sources suggest he wants to emulate the semi-legendary Queens Semiramis and Cyrus the Great, who supposedly crossed this desert, and to surpass them by succeeding where they failed. If true, it's hubris on a catastrophic scale, costing tens of thousands of lives. The army reunites in Persia in 324 BCE. Alexander immediately faces administrative problems. Many governors, believing Alexander dead in India, have been embezzling, oppressing populations, and building private armies. Alexander executes many of them. He also faces a more fundamental problem: how to rule his vast empire. He tries various solutions. Cultural fusion. At Susa, he arranges mass marriages. 90 of his officers marry Persian noblewomen, and he marries 2 Persian princesses himself, in addition to Roxana. He wants to create a Greco-Persian ruling class, most Macedonian. Officers abandon these wives after Alexander's death, showing how unpopular this policy is. Military integration. He trains 30,000 Persian youths in Macedonian warfare and incorporates them into his army. Macedonian veterans are furious. They see it as replacement, not integration, divine kingship. Alexander requests Greek cities recognize him as a god. Some comply, others mock. Sparta supposedly responds, "If Alexander wishes to be a god, let him be a god." Its compliance to sarcasm. In 324 BCE at Opis, tensions explode. Alexander announces that Macedonian veterans can go home with generous bonuses. Instead of gratitude, there's mutiny. The veterans feel insulted. Are they being dismissed? Replaced by Persians? Alexander reacts with fury. He leaps from his platform into the crowd, personally pointing out ringleaders for arrest. He threatens to use his Persian troops to conquer new lands without Macedonians at all. The confrontation ends with reconciliation. Alexander hosts a massive feast celebrating Macedonian-Persian unity. But the incident shows how fragile his authority has become. In October 324 BCE, personal tragedy strikes. Hephaestion, Alexander's closest friend and possibly lover, dies of fever. Alexander is devastated. He holds elaborate funeral games, executes the doctor who treated Hephaestion, and even raises a nearby city in grief like Achilles' rage after Patroclus' death in the Iliad. Some sources suggest Alexander orders Hephaestion worshipped as a divine hero. Whether this is grief, megalomania, or religious belief, it shows Alexander's psychological state. He's no longer the brilliant young general crossing into Asia. He's becoming something else, something grandiose, tragic, perhaps mad. In spring 323 BCE, Alexander plans new conquests. He wants to invade Arabia, then perhaps Carthage and the western Mediterranean. He's only 32. He has decades of conquering ahead. But in late May or early June, after a banquet, Alexander falls ill. Over 10 days, fever worsens. He can't speak. His soldiers, fearing he's dead, demand to see him. They file past his bed, and he silently acknowledges each one. On June 10th or 11th 323 BCE, Alexander the Great dies in Babylon. He's 32 years old. What killed him? Ancient sources suggest fever, possibly malaria, typhoid, or some other infection. Some ancient writers claim poison, suggesting various conspirators. Modern doctors, analyzing ancient descriptions of symptoms, have proposed malaria, typhoid, acute pancreatitis, West Nile virus, even poisoning with white hellebore. We'll probably never know. What matters is, Alexander is dead, and he's left no clear heir. His son, Alexander IV, will be born months later. His generals, ambitious men who've conquered the world with him, now fight each other for pieces of his empire. The wars of the Diadochi, the successor wars, will rage for decades, tearing apart Alexander's empire and creating the Hellenistic kingdoms, Ptolemaic Egypt, Seleucid Persia, Antigonid Macedon, and others. Alexander's empire doesn't last, but his legacy does. So, was Alexander the greatest general in history? Let's examine the evidence. For undefeated, Alexander never lost a battle. Not one. From Granicus to Hydaspes, every time his army faced enemies, it won. That's extraordinary. Tactical brilliance. His use of combined arms, heavy infantry phalanx, heavy cavalry, light infantry, siege engines was centuries ahead of his time. His personal cavalry charges at crucial moments broke enemy formations. His siege warfare conquered supposedly impregnable cities. His river crossings and mountain warfare showed versatility, strategic vision. He neutralized Persian naval superiority without major naval battles by controlling ports. He understood logistics difficult in ancient warfare. He founded cities to secure conquests. He adapted tactics to different enemies, Persians, Indian elephants, Central Asian guerrillas, personal courage. He led from the front, sharing dangers. He was wounded multiple times, arrow through the lung in India, serious head wound at Gaza. His courage inspired loyalty and aggression in his troops, speed and audacity. His forced marshes covered astounding distances. His willingness to attack across rivers, against larger forces, in difficult terrain. This audacity won battles that cautious generals would avoid. Against, he inherited a superb army. Philip II created the Macedonian phalanx and companion cavalry. Alexander's generals Parmenion, Craterus, Ptolemy, Perdiccas were talented commanders. How much was Alexander's genius versus having the ancient world's best military machine? His enemies were poorly led. Darius III fled twice. Persian military tactics were outdated. Alexander never faced a truly brilliant opposing general. Imagine Alexander against Hannibal or Julius Caesar. He built nothing lasting. His empire shattered immediately upon his death. He founded cities, but no stable government. He conquered everything and left chaos. He was reckless with lives. The Jedrosian Desert March killed tens of thousands for no military reason. His personal courage was inspiring, but also reckless. A wounded or dead king would doom his army. He may have been deteriorating. The drinking, the paranoia, the executions of companions, the claims to divinity by the end. Was he still the brilliant general of Issus and Gaugamela, or had power and stress corrupted him? Comparisons are inevitable, but difficult. Julius Caesar conquered Gaul and won a civil war, but fought mainly against Gauls and other Romans. Impressive, but not the vast multinational campaigns Alexander faced. Hannibal nearly defeated Rome despite being outnumbered and far from home, an incredible achievement. But he ultimately lost. Napoleon conquered most of Europe through brilliant strategy, but also lost multiple times, and ultimately failed. Genghis Khan built the largest contiguous empire in history, but over decades, with multiple armies and less personally involved in tactics. Each of these commanders has arguments for greatest ever. Alexander's advantage is simple: undefeated, young, legendary. Alexander the Great conquered the known world before age 30 and died at 32. In 13 years, he changed history. He spread Greek culture across Asia, creating Hellenistic civilization that blended Greek and Eastern elements, influencing art, architecture, philosophy, and science for centuries. He destroyed the Persian Empire and ended its threat to Greece, though he arguably became Persian himself in the process. He opened trade routes between East and West, connecting civilizations that had barely known each other. But he also left destruction, cities razed, populations enslaved, ancient cultures disrupted. His empire collapsed into wars that killed thousands more. And ultimately, he conquered for conquest's sake, not to build a better world, but to fulfill his own ambition and emulate Achilles. Was he the greatest general in history? Militarily, his record is hard to beat. 13 years of campaigning. Never defeated. Victories against impossible odds. Tactical innovations that influenced warfare for centuries. But if greatest means more than winning battles, if it means building something lasting, improving people's lives, creating stability, then Alexander falls short. He was a conqueror, not a builder. A warrior, not a statesman. Perhaps the question is wrong. Perhaps Alexander wasn't the greatest general. Perhaps he was the ultimate warrior, brilliant, courageous, charismatic, driven, who achieved glory. But not wisdom, victory, but not peace. Like his hero Achilles, he chose a short, glorious life. He achieved immortal fame. 2,000 years later, we still know his name, still debate his campaigns, still wonder at his achievements. He wanted to be remembered forever. On that measure alone, Alexander the Great.